Welcome to the Academy, where we discuss and seek a change in long-term athletic development. My name is Ben Wellenbach, and I am the dad of two girls, strength coach and owner of Be Fitness. It is my desire to help educate and shift the way our current culture operates regarding long-term athletic development. I thought I had it figured out. I had it narrowed down to two schools, UConn and Quinnipiac. Both were turning Division I the next season, and the programs had so much potential. And then life shifted. The irony is that my two options would have led me to our guest much sooner than today, as those schools have been a part of his path. Brijesh also started at the very place my journey started with Mike Boyle. As my life brought me to the Midwest, I consistently reconnected and stayed in tune with what was happening back east. The first time I started to hear about Coach B was in 2007 when he was posting articles on the Strength Coach Forum while at Holy Cross. You always got the sense from his writings and programming that he was searching for a way to evolve our industry for the greater good. In some cases, it was taking what was right in front of us and rewiring it to give it a new life. That is exactly what he has done and continues to do as the Associate Athletic Director and Director of Athletic Performance at Quinnipiac University. As I do with every guest on the podcast, I will pair each guest with a sneaker from the Nike collection that best represents them. In 1984, Nike conceptualized the Shox design. In 2000, a team finally released it. The team worked to make it, the design and concept work at the same time, not lose the integrity of the shoe. During the release, Nike made a basketball version called the Nike Shox BB4, which was popularized by Vince Carter when he dunked over the top of a 7-foot French player in the Olympics. No coincidence, the very first article I ever read from Coach B was a basketball program he developed. Being a director of performance at the highest level requires the same ingenuity, foresight, and execution as creating a global success shoe. Even though we have never met until today, it is evident to me that he has a lot of love of family and coaching. I went with the Olympic colorway representing Coach B's roots at UConn. It is an absolute pleasure and honor to have him on the podcast today. So Coach, welcome, and thank you very much for taking some time to share some lessons learned for long-term athletic development.
Ben, it's an honor and it's a pleasure, and it's probably the best intro I think I've ever had on a podcast. So I appreciate your homework and due diligence that you did on that. That was awesome.
You bet, man. I got the idea. We talked a little bit before this about Seinfeld and our both love of it. He started doing this series, Comedians in Cars Getting Coffee, and he matched a car to the comedian, and his love of cars is the same love I have for Nike sneakers.
That's amazing.
Yeah, I thought I would loop it around.
That's awesome. It only fits.
Yeah. So let's start in the beginning for you. Where did you grow up? What was that like? Brothers, sisters? Tell me about how sports existed for you. Was it structured, unstructured?
Yeah. So I grew up in Danbury, Connecticut. So I grew up in Connecticut. I'm an only child, and my parents immigrated here from Kenya. That's where I was actually born. And to give me opportunity and to give me a better chance of success coming in the future. So that being said, my parents didn't have a lot. And so they often said, I'd ask for a brother and sister, can we have another kid? And they're like, we can't afford it, because they worked all the time. And so my mom would have two jobs, my dad would have two jobs. And I was a typical Gen Xer where you're a latchkey kid. I'd come home and I was young and I had my key and I'd get off the bus and I'd go and I'd sit and watch TV and eat snacks. And as a result, I became pretty overweight. And so I became overweight, but I loved sports. Everything that we did was recreational. I lived in a condo complex. We'd play sports with all the kids outside. and it was great. And then I tried to play organized sports, but like we just didn't have the money or the funds to be able to do those things when I was a kid. So the first time I got to play organized sports was when I was in middle school. And I played basketball. One of my really good friends was his dad was the coach. It was great. It was so much fun. And then when I got to high school, I played football. I was still overweight at the time. I finished last in every conditioning test, in every conditioning practice. And then all throughout my life, though, like my family members would say, hey, you should lose weight. You've got to watch what you eat. And I never wanted to listen to it. And then all of a sudden, playing high school football, everything clicked finally. Suddenly, and after the season, I'm like, you know what? Like, I want to be able to play more. And so everything started to change. The way I thought changed. The way my habits changed. I'd go to run because that's the only thing I knew back then. It was just like 1994, right? 1995 probably. So I just run. That's how you're going to get in shape. And then I just started watching what I eat. And at that time, too, it was a low fat craze. So you can't eat fat. So I just load myself with carbohydrates. And now that you know it's sugar and processed, everything changes and everything we know, what we think we know at that time was right. So that was my kind of journey. And I ended up losing a lot of weight, but at the same time, it was a process that completely changed everything in my mind and everything, the way I thought about fitness and exercise and health. And I ended up playing more throughout my high school career, and to the point where one of our football coaches, my junior year, going into my senior year, had gotten an organized strength conditioning program from some college, and he implemented it with us. And I thought it was fascinating that you could change so many variables and change exercises throughout an off season to create a certain adaptation. And that led me into to a career of not a career yet, but wanting to probably progress towards a career of strength conditioning. And at that time, this was the late 90s, and you started to hear about some strength conditioning coaches, like when you start to watch sports. And then I remember I was in a car with my parents, and they're like, do you know what you're going to study at school? And I'm like, yeah, I want to be a strength conditioning coach. And I think they both, like, their jaws dropped on the floor. They're like, the first question, can you raise a family on that by doing that? Typical Indian parents, like that they only know if you're a doctor or a pharmacist, and then, or if you're a shop owner. So I'm like, no, I don't want to do that. Or a computer science. I'm like, I don't want to do that. And I'm like, this is what I want to do. I like training. I like exercise. I like lifting weights. I love sports. And I figured I want to help other people try to reach their goals. I want to try to help other people reach their athletic aspirations because I was limited athletically, genetically through my own career. So they're like, okay. And so that kind of drove me to almost prove them wrong. So I went to the University of Connecticut. And my second week on campus, there was a flyer, like learning how to do the power lifts, the Olympic lifts. I can't remember what exactly it was, but it was with assistant strength conditioning coach Andrea Hootie. And so I went to it, and I met Andrea Hootie. I told her, I want to do what you do. And so she's okay. The first thing you have to do is you got to go meet Coach Martin down the varsity weight room. He's the head conditioning coach. So I remember I went down, knocked on the door, and anybody who's ever listened to this has ever met Coach Martin. Rest in peace. He passed away years ago, but probably 6'2", 6'3", pretty intimidating. And I'm a college freshman, right? My second week in campus. And so I go up to him and I say, hey, Coach, I'm naive, young and naive. And I said, Coach, I'd like to do what you guys do. What can I do to learn? And then so he peppered me with questions and brought me into the office. And then anything I didn't know, he's okay, go look it up. And then I think a week later, my phone rang, and we didn't have cell phones then. So like my dorm phone rang, and it was Sean Windle. And Sean he's had a long career in the NBA. He's Paul George's personal trainer now. But anyway, he's hey, I have track and field. Do you want to come down for it? I said, yes. Yeah. So I went down the varsity weight room, watched track and field train. Coach Martin brought me in the office, started peppering with questions. And this happened for months, right? And I'd show up, watch, observe, then they'd come in with questions. And he'd always leave me with something. If I didn't know it, he's okay, go look it up. So I remember buying like a biomechanics book from the school bookstore. I bought exercise physiology books. So I'd look things up. And this like early stages of the internet where Web 1, just information being put out there. So I'd go back, and I think he was testing me at the time. And this essentially trying to find out, how bad do you want to work with athletes? How bad do you want to learn from us? And so by the end of my freshman year, I remember he's, hey, can you teach this track girl how to do a power clean? I'm like, okay, yeah. So I taught her based on everything that I've learned and seen. And then, yeah, that just kind of led me into every single year that I was at school at UConn. It led me to more and more opportunity because I kept showing up. They started letting me work out in the weight room. I'd work out with the staff. I got to work with basketball. I got to work with football. I worked with every single sport there. to the point where when I was a senior, and I can go double back, there's some steps behind, but when I was a senior, I was given teams, right? Because Sean ended up taking a head job at Rutgers. They were in a bind. They couldn't hire anybody until January. So they're like, can you take some teams? I'm like, yeah. So I had men's, women's track and field, and then baseball when I was a senior in college. Prior to that summer, I did an internship at Mike Boyle Strength Conditioning, and that was only because I got connected by Sean Windle. So yeah, so I was a senior in college. I had class with these kids that I was coaching. I was fully responsible for communicating with sports medicine, with the sport coach, about programming, and it was the guys were great. Like the guys, they didn't treat me any different, but almost because I had held myself like a full-time assistant for the last couple of years. And so they had respect for me, but I was prepared and I was organized. They understood I was there to help them. To the point now, like where one of them, I keep in touch with someone. One of them is now that baseball coach at Middletown. No, not Middletown, Middlebury in Vermont. And he still keeps in touch. I talked to his class the other day. But yeah, I give a lot of credit to those guys. Like they have faith and trust in somebody that's their same age, their peer, and trying to help guide them and coach them. At that time, it was an unreal experience. And then after I graduated, they wanted to bring me back as a GA. I ended up doing an internship at Holy Cross in the summertime. I'd come back and be a GA for another year and a half. And then Holy Cross I remember Jeff Oliver at the time. Hey, he called in my last semester. He said, hey, I want you to be my assistant. I remember mulling about it and thinking about it. You wanted to try to keep me on staff. I said, you know what? I have to take this because at the end of the school year, you say you want to keep me, but I don't know if it's going to be there. So I'm going to take the guaranteed thing right now, and I'll drive 50 minutes back and forth. Gas was much cheaper then, so that helped. I could drive back and forth. And I finished my last year of school, but I started working full time too. And then I did that for 4.5 years, and it was an unbelievable experience. Really refined like my system, really refined some coaching. Jeff was great to work with. He gave me so much autonomy and responsibility. It taught me a lot about balance too. Taught me a lot about, which is what your podcast is about too, but taught me a lot about balance within life and having that balance within the things that you want to do professionally, but also valuing the things outside so you can maximize your time and actually be at your best when you're at work. For 4.5 years. And I think I was ready. I was ready to run my own program. And fortunately, Quinnipiac had a brand new position. They created a strength conditioning position. They were hiring vendors and contractors before to come in and train the athletes. And they finally decided to bring somebody in-house. And they just built this new basketball and hockey arena. And it had been open for a year and a half. And so I said, you know what? I jumped on that opportunity. And it was great. It was, looking back at those times, it was a lot of teaching, a lot of getting people to buy into the philosophies and things that I was trying to teach them. And then it evolved over the course of time. It became me. I eventually got more full-time staff members. There's another weight room on campus. So we have 2 weight rooms. Our staff has expanded. They've continued to invest back in me. They've continued to support me throughout the way. And 18 years later, I'm still here.
So I want to loop back to a number of things, but one of the things that I want to loop to is in the beginning, like in high school, when you made this shift, I actually talked to Mike before this podcast.
Oh, nice.
And he said to talk to you about your weight loss journey.
Yeah.
And I think it's so appropriate because so much of what we think about for this quote unquote long-term athletic development, we think about the youth and kids. We don't think about the fact that 75% of our life is spent more so in adulthood than in like the youth. And most of what at least we see from a private sector, not necessarily at the university sport level, is we have folks that are just in the game of life, and they are some are along this weight loss journey, some are just looking to be healthy. So I guess the question in there is less about the low fat carb craze, but it's more on, I would say, what shifted in your mindset to almost draw the Popeye line. I've taken all I can takes and I can't takes no
Yeah.
more, and I want to make that shift. What was that decision maker for you?
I didn't want to be embarrassed anymore. To be like, I wanted to, I didn't, my teammates were great, right? Like, I was the classic kid. I'd finish last in conditioning. Everybody would clap for me to try to finish. And at the end of it, I was like, one of my coaches too, he said, no, if you get yourself in shape, you're going to be able to play more. Like, you've got great feet, like you've got great technique, like you're going to be able to play. And then I said, I don't want to be the person that finishes last. That was the thing that got me. I was like, I don't want to be last in conditioning anymore. So I need to start making a change. And so I started to prioritize my conditioning. And the number one way I did that was because I just said I was overweight. I was 225 pounds. I was too heavy. And yeah, my teammates, like I said, my teammates were great, but it was just a conscious decision. Like, I knew what I needed to do. I just finally valued it enough where I actually wanted to take steps behind it. And it's no different than a message that I might give athletes nowadays is, listen, if you value something enough, you're going to take the actionable steps or the correct steps to try to help you get closer to what it is that you value. But if you don't value it, I can talk to you some ad nauseum, but you're going to be the ones who own that journey. And you're going to be the ones who actually make the actionable choices to take you closer to the things that you want to do. So other people valued my weight loss and my conditioning more than I did before that. And then I finally started to realize I have to own this and I actually want to do it because my goal was to play. But
Mm.
through the process of it is what I really started to fall in love with, which was the daily exercise. I love to feel like, I remember I think I timed my first mile. It was like a 10-minute mile and I was exhausted. A couple months later, it was like down to 9 or 8 minutes. And it was like, oh, this is getting easier. So I started to understand if I do something frequently enough and consistently enough, I'm going to get better at it. And so that started to shape my everything. Like, then I noticed, like, by eating a certain way, I started to feel a different way. And it was this process of falling in love with trying to get better and finding ways to improve and finding ways to learn it, which we call now growth mindset. But looking back on it, like, that's really what started to happen because I didn't want to be embarrassed anymore because I wanted to play and I didn't want to be last.
So you alluded to this a little bit earlier, but let's just like really clarify it or give some attention to it. How, so now that decision, how is that impacted now where you currently are as a coach? And do you see that it doesn't necessarily have to be weight loss? Weight loss is, let's say, an aspect, but the principle is seeing something, making the decision, shifting, making the change. Do you have someone that stands out for you? You don't have to necessarily
Yeah.
name names, but do you have someone that stands out for you that you said, look, I really see something here, and they made the shift, and look at where they are now?
Yeah. I think what I learned through that process was that, again, N equals one, and it was like a small sample size was me, is that anyone can improve. Anyone can get better. That's essentially the ethos of everything that I do, is that anybody has the opportunity to get better if they're willing to take the appropriate steps. And along those lines, it's, you don't bitch, you don't complain, you don't make excuses. Like, you have to own your own development process, whether it be as a human being or as an athlete. Again, it's a message I try to teach my kids right now. Falls upon deaf ears, but it's never going to stop. It's through the process of my own personal journey. It's realizing that I can get better, but every single person has the opportunity to get better if they're willing to look at things through the right lens. And maybe I shouldn't say right, but maybe appropriate lens, if they're willing to try to make that certain change. And again, it comes down to whatever it is that you value. And through that journey, like, that's the way I coach. That's the way that I help. And I understand that I have an opportunity to try to impact somebody else's life in a positive way if I can get them to understand that they do have true ownership of their own journey, their own body, their own mind, like the actions that they decide to take. So those are the types of things I taught when I was at UConn, and I refined when I was at Holy Cross. And it's a message to every single student athlete within our athletic department. Even if I don't work with them directly, That's my staff is instructed. That's the way we have to view our job and our roles is to try to impact them positively and realize that they do have the opportunity to get better. Some aspire to play professionally. Some aspire to be great while they're in college. Some people aspire to move up the depth chart. Some people aspire to be, like I had a conversation with an alum the other day. I want to be a star. You know what I mean? And so everybody has different aspirations and different goals. But the bottom line, it comes down to willingness to want to get better. If you have that willingness and that want, good things are going to happen. Like one of my athletes today, women's ice hockey player, she's leaving. She's done, graduated, but she wants to play pro hockey. And she just said, I've learned so much from the things that I kind of teach them on a regular basis. But it really comes down to recognizing that every single day that they come into the gym or that they wake up really is an opportunity to try to improve and try to get better. So there's countless stories along the way that I won't bore you with, but yeah, it's one of those things that gets reinforced when those people realize it. Seniors leave or somebody makes it as a professional or somebody, not even like an athlete, but just like a professional in life. They start to recognize and realize the things that they learned within a weight room can help them for the rest of their life. It sort of comes back to recognizing you get an opportunity to try to impact somebody's life as a human being first and foremost, and you shouldn't take that lightly. And when you can do that, they're probably going to help improve as an athlete too.
I had interviewed a couple of coaches ago. One of the sayings that they had was sports are the classroom of life.
100%.
And I would even refine it to say that at least from my standpoint, in the athletes, in the teams, like the team ethos, and even the adults that we've worked with who are not in athletics anymore, how they approach and what they do in the weight room is an absolute reflection of how they approach and what they do in life. And I'm fortunate enough to work with a bunch of endurance athletes. And I will tell you what, you can say all you want that you run a 6-minute mile, but if you got to be able to back it up. You can't, it's like you can't fake that. And it's just picking up 300 pounds. 300 pounds here in Illinois is the same 300 pounds in Connecticut where you are.
Yep.
You either do it or you don't do it.
100%.
I think the other really important highlight to touch on is going back to your Yukon days, and this is applicable again in the weight room, but in life, is showing up. Like you just kept showing up to Coach Martin.
Mm-hmm.
And you just kept showing up to all the other coaches and all the other opportunities. And I guess, can you expand either on that for yourself personally, but if there's other athletes or stories that would emphasize that point? Because whether you're on a weight loss journey or you're looking to play a sport in high school, or you're looking to go to the next level in college, or you're looking to go to the next level from a pro standpoint, or you're just looking to be successful in life, showing up.
Yeah, showing up is just about being consistent, right? And it comes back to, I think, what I said before is like if you value something enough, you're going to figure out ways to organize your schedule and organize your life to be able to fit the things that you want in to your life. And so I think I worked in the rec center all 4 years too. I scheduled my classes at particular times that led all in the morning, so it allowed me to have my afternoons open to be able to get into the varsity weight room. I scheduled all my work hours in the rec center for the weekend because I knew we wouldn't have as many training sessions on the weekend. So I left my afternoons open from 2 to 6 or from 3 to 6 available every single day so I could show up consistently because I wanted to learn. I wanted to learn what it took to be a strength conditioning coach in college because that's what I wanted to do. And so all the decisions I made outside of that helped impact that. And so it's no different than when I tell an athlete right now is if you want to get faster, if you want to get stronger, if you want to get in better shape, it comes down to consistency. And I tell them flat out, just because you do it one time doesn't mean you're automatically going to get faster. It doesn't mean you're automatically going to get better. All you did was you create a stimulus to try to exact some sort of change. And now you've got to be able to recover on the outside of this. So go to sleep, eat the right way, take care of your mind, do the right things outside of here so that you can be at your best tomorrow so we can take another step forward if it is what you say you want to do. We have had so many conversations like, hey, Coach B, I want to win Player of the Year. Coach B, I want to be a starter. Coach B, I want to play professionally. Okay, then you got to show up. But don't tell me like, hey, I want to work on extra speed work Tuesday before practice, but then you don't show up. I'm here, but if you're not willing to show up, and then just try to teach them, again, that's a teachable moment. Just get them to understand I can help you, but only if you're willing to show up. So it's about consistency, and just because you do it one week doesn't mean that it's automatically going to be better. We've got to do it over time. And again, I can give you a story. We got a freshman hockey player came in last year, so he's just about to end his freshman year right now. Really eager, wants to play pro hockey, wants to be great, eager. And every single day, I just want to get better. I just want to get better. And he just wants to get faster. So we do workouts. We often squat to VBT. So he tracks his speed. And then after his first workout, like I think I purposely had him go lighter because I just need to see him move. And he said, I can do more. I said, that's okay. I don't need you to do more right now. We're just going to make sure we try to get the velocity between here and here. And we take it, be aware of your foot position, be aware of all this stuff. And then we say, I can do better. I can do more. I said, we'll just go slow. We're just going to do it this way. And then we'll test vertical jumps. My jump is still the same. I said, don't worry. I said, just keep sticking to the process, feeling your body, get your hips looser. And he said 4 or 5 months in, like my jumps are still the same. I just want to get better. I said, I know you will. Just trust the process. And then he used to say, he came in for extra speed work, did all this stuff. And then he's, hey, like people from back home, they watch me play. They said I look faster. I said, I know. I said, we're not done yet. We said, we're going to keep going. And he's our head coach and said, you look faster. And then he starts to feel good about himself. And then after the season, we did some testing. He set a PR on his jumps. He set a PR on his 10-yard sprint. And he's like, I feel good. He said, I want more. I said, it's going to take some time. I was like, we're not done yet. I said, we just got to keep trusting the process. And so that's the lesson being for all the listeners. It's okay to be eager. It's okay to want more. Just got to make sure that you continue to trust the process and continue to show up regularly and daily and just being consistent with all of the things that are within your control. I think sometimes this day and age, many people get too wrapped up in the things outside of their control. The big thing that we got to make sure is remind yourself, focus on the things that they're right in there in front of you that you actually have the ability to affect, whether it be your nutrition, your sleep habits, your training habits, your intentionality, your details, your discipline. How willing are you to hold yourself to the higher standard? Like those are all things that are within your control. And recognize the things that are outside your control and don't waste energy on them.
One of my favorite things about strength and conditioning is how we can take someone's end goal, so end want, and reverse engineer it and chunk it into pieces. And it makes it like what you're talking about. For me, it brings a huge smile to my face because I love this kid being eager and continuing to show up, but also in the same aspect, just focus on the one little thing that we've got today. We all know what you want. We know that. Nobody comes in the weight room and they go, I want to get slower. I want to get weaker. I don't want to jump so high. My vertical is too high. Coach, I need to jump less. Nobody does that. I love the chunking or what my current coach would say, the Lego pieces, how we can just Lego piece it out. But Mike also said, in addition to your weight loss journey, he also talked about, which goes into this whole showing up, it goes into your consistency argument. He said, I think you need to ask him about his schedule while he interned
Yeah.
for me. And he was like briefly going over it, but I think it's important for you to expand on it. It goes into how bad do you want it? And what are you willing to, like you said, I guess it all comes down to prioritizing. Talk about your schedule and keep in mind, folks that are like watching, this was very early on
Yeah.
in Coach B's career. This was before any big stuff had happened. And this was an internship. This was not like a full-time position. Mike says a lot, how you approach one thing is how you approach kind of everything. Anyways, I'll let you.
Yeah. So all throughout, I think I got this job after my senior year in high school. It was at a country club in Danbury. And so I started off as a busboy in the clubhouse, and then it was a great job. Like I made some good money after that year. Going into my sophomore year, I went back for the summer. It was always a job I worked in the summer. And then whenever I was home during Christmas break, winter break, they were like you did a great job as a busboy. Do you want to be a waiter? And here's the benefits of it. I was like, yeah, I'll be a waiter. And so I was a waiter after my sophomore summer, and then after my junior summer is when I got this internship with Mike Boyle. So it was the summer of 2001. And so it was my second season as a waiter. And once I found out that I got the internship, I don't remember exactly how I managed it all and did it all. But what I did was after school was out, I don't think the internship started until the beginning of June. So I said, hey, I told Ridgewood, I'm like, I have this internship it's gonna consume my weekdays. I can drive home every other weekend if you want, and I can work. And they're like, absolutely. And they recognized my work ethic. They wanted to keep me on staff. They didn't want to lose me. And so they were willing to work with my schedule. And I told Boyles, hey, what's our work schedule going to look like? And they're like, you're going to be here Monday through Thursday. You're going to have the weekends from Friday, Saturday, Sunday off. So I told the country club, like, here's what I'll do is I don't know if I can do this every single weekend, but let's commit to every other weekend. I'll work Friday. I'll drive home Friday, put me on shift for Friday night. I'll do a double on Saturday, and then Sunday I'll leave, so I can get 3 shifts in. Maybe I worked like the Sunday morning shift and I drove back at night too. That might have been I can't remember exactly. But anyway, that's what I did. And I think Mike's internships are much different now, but back then it was 14 and a half hour days. It was no joke. 14 and a half hour days. You're on your feet all day long. You had to do the program. So that was a 2 hour workout. You had the opportunity to work with pros. And primarily we coach high school kids and middle school kids. But we had that opportunity. All the interns had to show up at probably 6 a.m. or 6:30. We had to show up. We had to set up. We had to bring stuff down to the tennis courts. It was a grind looking back at it. But we did it. We did Monday through Thursday, 14 and a half hour days. And I drive home, yeah, Friday. Looking back and I'm like, this is crazy. But I did it because I needed to make the money. But I wanted to make sure I kept the job and they wanted me to work for them. And I had time. I wasn't doing anything Friday, Saturday, Sunday. So I might as well fill that time. And the weekends I didn't work, I started studying for my CSCS. And so I'd stay up there on the weekends I didn't work and I'd study and I'd read. I explored Boston a couple times, but for the most part, yeah, I would just consume books, consume information. That was the other thing too. I don't know if Mike said this. Mike had so many books that we just read. He had VHS, like I'd watch videos. Like it was a summer of like practical experience and learning, but then also I was able to consume so much information, so many books. I think I have notes from back then too. I'd start to develop my philosophy, how I want to do things, what progressions I wanted to use for linear speed, lateral speed, for training, all this kind of stuff. But then it was also a lesson in time management too, because I did drive back and forth from Connecticut to Massachusetts, and I think that was about a 2.5 hour drive too from where we were in Woburn. So 2.5 hour drive, and then committed to working. And I was young too, but like those are the thing, like those are reps. Like I tell my athletes, like reps are the key to life. Like those are the reps where I really got better and I really wanted to learn. But it proved to me that you can do anything. Like Was it hard? 100% it was hard. It was challenging. Um, but that experience helped shape me into the person, into the coach that I am now. Because at Mike's, it was groups of 15 every 15 minutes. It was nonstop. You had to have energy. You had to be able to coach. You had to be able to get kids to do things that they didn't want to do. It was opportunity to work with professionals. It was everything. I remember one time too, because Mike would hire just some of his athletes to help coach too. And they're like, well, I remember one girl, she was sitting there at the end of the day and she was like sitting there while we're all cleaning up. And she's, I'm tired. I'm like, you only got here half the day. I was like, try doing this every single day for 14 and a half hour days and tell me you're tired. And then I walked away. And I'm like, it just, I guess I didn't really have a lot of sympathy for that. But I don't now, though, too. Not that I don't. When people think that things are hard, you have so much more to be able to do. You have so much more within you that you can be able to push past. And those are the types of things that I can try to tell athletes now and tell my kids is you have so much more left in the tank. You think something's hard right now, don't give up. Just keep pushing, keep going, show up, take another step, be a little bit better with your habits, maybe stretch a little bit more. You'll feel better for tomorrow. You're sore and tired right now? Good. You should feel sore and tired. It's the off season. That's the only way that you're going to become a little bit more resilient. Um, it taught me a lot about just don't make excuses. Like I said before, like you can do some really difficult things if you want it bad enough. So I appreciate Mike
So,
sharing that with you.
yeah, I also talked to Kevin Neild, and I had him on the previous podcast, and I reached out to him as well. And he said one of the things that about you that inspires him is that there's always a sense of you being a student of learning.
Yes,
And
agreed.
he very much values that aspect of you. And my question around that for you is, what are you currently focused on learning and working to evolve?
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's part of the get better mentality and get better mindset is realizing that there's so much out there. There's so much information that we do not know. And not just within training and science. Learn about life, learn about science, learn about um, tech. There's so many things of basketball. Learn about history. There's so many different things out there that you can learn. And yeah, so that's just something I've always had. And I think you mentioned in the intro too, like how I'm always on the search for ingenuity and looking for things. Is it's the program that I have now is what I think is the best right now. If I looked at what I did 5 or 10 years ago, I could like laugh at it. I'm like, why did I do that? But at that time, I thought that was the best program I could deliver to the student athletes I was willing to train or had the opportunity to train. And so the things I'm learning about right now, honestly, AI, like understanding how to be able to implement AI within our, not only within training, but also within recall of information. I don't know if I share, if you knew this, but I made an AI chatbot on my website. And so I made an AI agent website, a chatbot, but basically it's my virtual assistant. You can go in there and you can ask it questions. And any question that you would ask me, should populate an answer. You can't ask it about what the price of Tesla stock was yesterday or what the weather was. Like it's not programmed to do that. It's only to be able to recall any information or anything that I've said within a podcast or any content that I've written. So it's my own virtual assistant because I wanted to understand like how can I use AI to basically recall everything that I've said and everything that I've put out there to try to help, whether it be my interns or my assistants, or even recall something that I forgot. And so it just lives it's at every page of my website, so coachbpatel.com. But so I made that understanding AI. And then the other thing I'm learning now is we're not very tech heavy. Like we've got some tech, but if you talk to some strength coaches out there right now, like it's crazy. Like they measure external loading, they're measuring internal loading, they've got force plates, you've got like all this quantitative stuff. And I've tried to explore down there. And I'm not going to say I'm never going to do it. When I try to go down that rabbit hole, I recognized it took away from my ability to coach because I had to spend more time sifting through numbers, sifting through data, and I lost what I thought made me a really good coach, which was the qualitative side of things. getting athletes to understand how to feel their body, how to sense and feel their body so they can ultimately can control and change. It got me away from understanding who they are and talking to them and getting to know them as a person, because time is our biggest asset. And so if I decide to invest more time in trying to get metrics and numbers and data and taking away, it's going to take away from my time to be able to connect with the student athletes. And again, I'm limited, right? I've got 4 teams in one weight room. I've got a family. It's all going to be somewhat limited. Getting an understanding of how to utilize the numbers and metrics that we have to be able to better prepare the athletes that we train. And this is specifically for certain athletes and specifically for our hockey teams, because they're so trained, right? They usually come in with some sort of a training base behind them. Everybody has different needs. And so something that I've really improved upon and gotten better at over the last couple of years is how to individualize within a group and team setting. Kevin has written about it, and he's talked about like bucketing athletes. I've come up with a solution. It may change, but we call it a power quotient. So we basically take their peak power, which is taken from the Sayers formula that we get from their vertical jump of their body weight, and we divide that by what their squat max is. And their squat max we just get from VBT, and we look at what that ratio tells us. If it's a large ratio, like there's a big difference between their peak power and their squat, that means that we need to be able to get them stronger to try to decrease and close that gap a little bit. Then there's our middle range or middle ratio. So it's a moderate power to strength kind of group. And then the low group, if they've got a small ratio between the two, that means we need to get them faster. So that group needs to be able to express their force at a higher velocity. And that's going to try to help improve that number so we can get them in that middle range. And so those are the things that we've been working at, is like, how do I not deal, that's a bad word, but how do we look at what we actually have? What constraints do we have? How can we maximize that to try to help best prepare our student athletes to try to improve and get better? That's a long-winded way. So looking at AI, building out my own chatbot, and then looking at different ways that we can try to individualize within the metrics that we have. Like if you have force plates, you can kind of get some of that data, whether somebody needs more eccentric strength, somebody needs more power production, but not having force plates to be able to do that. What can we look at what we actually do and to try to individualize a little bit differently? And I haven't talked
I
about that too,
want
so
to.
you're the first person to hear about it.
Oh, that's awesome. That's
Yeah.
so cool. I think utilizing AI is an interesting one. I feel like that could be a whole other podcast unto itself, because in many cases there's still so much to explore, and it will and can save a lot of time and effort and efficiency and allow you to do exactly what you just said, which is do what you think you're best at and where you really want to spend your resources of coaching and developing people. I would say one last thing from a coaching, and then I want to ask from a fatherhood standpoint a question. But with coaching, what? Because I asked Mike this, I asked some other coaches that I've had on the podcast. What stood out for you for the national championship men's hockey team? What was it the culture? Was it obviously the talent was there? That's not what's in question, but to win a Division One men's hockey championship is far more than just talent. So, what stood out for you on that team?
Wow. On that team, the biggest, I think the first word that comes to mind is accomplishment, right? It was a massive sense of accomplishment, not from that group. That group put a lot into it, but like for every group that came before them that allowed that group to be in that moment. And that's something
Mm,
I try to teach and tell the athletes we have now at Quinnipiac, regardless of team, is to recognize and honor the past. Keep in touch with alumni. Like the alumni care about you, right? They care about your development. They care about your successes because they feel a part of it. And so getting them to understand, like, You're only here because of what happened, what the people before you did. So I'll circle back. Like we'll take, because we're talking men's hockey. So when I got to Quinnipiac, like one of the first things was I asked the seniors on the team, was like, what's your goal? And they're like, we want to finish in the top four. I'm like, finish in the top four? I'm like, of their conference. I said, why wouldn't you want to win the conference? And they're like, I don't know. We've never finished in the top four. Okay, if you get a top four, you get a bye. You get to host a second round quarterfinal series. And then I'm like, okay. A couple classes later, I remember one of our, he had to become a future captain, but like one of his goals is I want to win a national championship. I'm like, we haven't even won our league yet. We haven't even gone to the NCAA tournament. You want to win a national championship? He's like, yeah. I'm like, all right. So they kept saying that they wanted to win a national championship. They kept saying that they wanted to win the league. They want to get trophies. They want to do all these outcome driven things. They kept saying they wanted to do it. And I kept trying to tell them, your habits are not matching the things that you say you want. We're not showing up on time. We're not holding each other to a high enough standard. We're not doing the work when we're not here. We're not taking care of ourselves when we're out of the rink. I said, you say you want to do these things. We don't show up to a team that you think that you're going to beat, right? And then either you lose or you tie. We're not taking advantage of every single opportunity. We're not valuing a practice. We're not valuing this workout right now. So it was like those small steps over years. What was that? How many years was that in? Was that 15 years? I think it was my 15th year we won that. Yeah. And so it was a culmination of all these things. But then eventually, when that one kid said he wanted to win a national championship, by the time he was a senior, we got to the Frozen Four. It was the first time we won our regular season. The first time we made the NCAAs. We got to the Frozen Four. And then that started to become the standard. So something that was talked about before was so far away, but we just kept taking steps towards building a really strong foundation or culture of how we show up, of how we work, how we speak to ourselves, how we speak to each other, the level of accountability that you're going to hold yourself to, the respect that you show in each other with, a work ethic that you bring every single day. And again, there was always bumps along that road, but like that first group that got to the Frozen Four, that started to become the expectation for every single subsequent group in class. They started to recognize, okay, we got into the Frozen Four, we want to win a national championship. We got into the Frozen Four, we kept losing in the regional finals like 2 or 3 years in a row. They recognized why, like a game in October or a game in January when those students are on campus, those games matter. Where we might have tied or we might have lost in the past, that group that eventually won, they started recognizing every single game was important. Every single game was a playoff game. But for every game to be a playoff game, every practice mattered that way too. So we had super competitive practices. We had really good practices. In the gym, I barely had to do anything. Like they essentially ran every single workout, every single lift. Like they knew the standard. And that's what you want as a coach is you want the group to take ownership of everything. If you have to handhold them, like you're not really coaching. You're not. You have the job of a coach is to teach them what it is that you want to do at a certain standard. And so they carry the ship the entire way. So when that group finally won, it was the first word, like when you asked, it was a sense of accomplishment. Like they reached the top of the mountain, but not that just one group. It was like all the groups before them, and there were so many alumni there too. They were so proud. They had tears down their face. They were crying too because they felt it, even though they weren't on the ice, because of how connected of a program we are. But they recognized all the little small steps along the way. It was really just a sense of accomplishment. Yeah, and proud. That's the other word too.
There's a lot in there, and I hope, whoever's listening, just that last couple minutes, there's a lot in there, and I hope that people get something, a golden nugget from that. The last question I have for you, because I know time is limited. I said fatherhood, but I guess I meant would include everything, not just as a coach, but as a father, as just a human. What would you like your legacy to be?
Oh, geez. Lord Almighty, I don't think I've ever been answered that question. I don't think I've ever reflected on that. Probably knowing my ethos, it's that Coach B had a positive impact on everybody that he met. And that impact might have not been something that an individual may have liked initially, but recognizing after the fact that he was there because he helped me and he cared about me at the end of the day because he just wanted me to be better. So I think that's my legacy, is what I'd like to be remembered as, is somebody who helped people get better.
Excellent. Again, thank you so much for the time, for the insights, for the stories. Coach B has a number of resources on coachbpatel.com. There's a vast number of podcasts that he's already been on, from baseball to hockey to other sports. So I encourage everybody to look at those. There's programming on there if you're interested in that. And we have learned that the chatbot will absolutely speak his language. So lest you think you are not getting the full Coach B experience, it is happening all the time. And we look forward to more from you, Coach. Again, thank you very much, and wishing you all the best.
Thank you, Ben. I appreciate it. It was a great conversation.